My name is Kathleen Heaston, and this is my CRJ 306 presentation on at-risk youth and programs that can help them. There are many different problems facing our youth. These problems include, but are not limited to, prosecuting youth as adults, various statistics regarding at-risk youth, statistics regarding juvenile population, young racial minorities as victims of crime, characteristics of juveniles, violent crime victimization, as well as the researched Los Angeles Police Department Jeopardy program. Prosecuting youth as adults. Some people say that children who commit adult crimes, such as murder, should be treated as adults. They also believe that they should be prosecuted as adults and sentenced to adult correctional institutions. A quote by Mark Shiner says that this was a heinous crime committed by a young man with a difficult personality who should be behind bars. Let us not forget a man's life has been taken away. Those on the other side of the debate contend that prosecuting children who commit crimes of violence usually suffer from severe mental and emotional problems, and that locking kids up in adult jails does not deter crime or rehabilitate juvenile offenders. In 2012, the United States Supreme Court ruled that the imposition of mandatory life without parole sentences on offenders who were younger than 18 at the time of their crimes violated the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. By requiring that all children convicted of homicide receive lifetime incarceration without possibility of parole, regardless of their age and age-related characteristics and the nature of their crimes, the mandatory sentencing schemes before us violate the principle of proportionality and so the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. In Montgomery v. Louisiana, the court ruled 6-3 that its decision in Miller v. Alabama must be applied retroactively to the estimated 1,200 to 1,500 cases involving juvenile offenders who were sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole to 2012. The court stated that these offenders must have an opportunity to be resentenced or to be argued for parole. 22% of the juvenile population, but only 14% of those 18 to 64, and 9% of those 65 and older were living below the poverty threshold in 2010. The percentage of the juvenile population living below the poverty level was 39% for African Americans, 35% for Hispanics and American Indians, 14% for Asians, and 12% for whites. The proportion of children living in single-parent households increased from 9% in 1960 to 27% in 2010. The rates were highest for African American youth, which was 54%, and were lowest for Asian, 12%, and white youth, which was 20%. Although the proportion of youth who quit school without completing a high school degree was lower in the 2000s than in the 1990s, about 4% of all youth enrolled in high school in 2008 left without a degree. There were no statistically significant racial or ethnic differences in the dropout rate. African Americans have higher personal theft and violent victimization rates than other racial or ethnic groups, and that Hispanics generally have higher victimization rates than non-Hispanics. 1 of every 6 juveniles had been victim of property crime. This rate was 40% higher than the property crime victimization rate for adults. Juvenile victimization rate is higher than the adult rate. Property crime victimization rate for white juveniles is higher than the property crime rate victimization for white adults. Hispanic property crime victimization rates, however, do not vary significantly between juveniles and adults, but non-Hispanic rates do vary. Researchers estimate that juveniles with the following characteristics have a relatively high risk for property crime victimization: African American juveniles, juveniles in urban areas, and juveniles in the West. These victimization patterns closely mirror the higher risk for adults in these categories. Violent victimization rates, which include the crimes of rape, robbery, aggravated assault, and simple assault, are somewhat higher for younger age groups than for older age groups. The rate for individuals who were 25 to 34 years old was 28.5 per 1,000 people. Data reveals that the overall violent victimization rate, which in years past was higher for African Americans than for whites, was very similar for these two groups in 2007. The violent victimization rates for youth ages 12 to 15 were 66.7 for African Americans and 58.7 for whites. In 2007, the rates were 46.1 for African Americans and 42.1 for whites. The rate for African Americans fell more sharply than did the rate for whites. The rate for African American youth, which was 25.4, was twice the rates of white, which was 11.7, and Hispanic, which was 11.3 youth. The 2010 simple assault rates for African American youth, which was 29.9, also was higher than that for whites, which was 21.5, or Hispanic, which was 19.0 youth. Young African American males have a greater likelihood than other offenders of being victims of robbery, but the rates for overall violence are very similar for young African American males and for offenders other than white females. For violent crimes in general, the rates for African American males, African American females, and white males differed by less than 2 percentage points. By contrast, the robbery victimization rate for African American males, which was 9.1, was considerably larger than the rate for white males, which was 5.4, and was more than 10 times the rate for white females, which was 0.9, and African American females, which was 0. African American and Hispanic youth were more likely than white youth to be victims of crimes committed with weapons. For my program, I selected the Los Angeles Police Department Jeopardy program. Now I will go over the program's mission, who they serve, positive outcomes, how the program works, how I found the programs, along with my conclusion. The Jeopardy program is a gang prevention and intervention program. The Jeopardy program is for boys and girls ages 8 through 17 and their parents. Jeopardy combines the strength of the community, neighborhoods, schools, and the police department to effect positive, lifelong attitudinal changes in the young people so as to have a positive impact on the community. Jeopardy targets at-risk children, offering a variety of educational and physical projects from tutoring to martial arts. The goals of the Jeopardy program are to decrease truancy, improve grades, increase graduation rates, improve self-esteem, decrease the risk of gang involvement, improve conflict resolution and other life-affirming skills, improve and demonstrate goal-setting skills, improve reading and writing, and decrease violent and other inappropriate behavior. The Jeopardy program works by identifying the children that need help, notifying their parents and holding a family interview, referring families to local community counseling agencies, holding monthly family seminars, offering alternative activities to be selected by each child, and monitoring the children monthly for at least 1 year. I was the program manager of New Beginnings Addiction and Recovery Center, and I oversaw all of the at-risk youth, mostly group home children, that came through our clinic. We specialized in creating client-specific programs such as parenting, anger management, life skills, and drug and alcohol counseling to give the at-risk youth the best chance of success. I was the program manager for 10 years, and it was the most fulfilling job I ever had. Not only was I the manager, but I was also a counselor who saw firsthand the joy and success each of the clients had.